Hey, just a warning if you're tuning in this week, our format's a little bit different. Caleb and I will be discussing some heavy topics, so be forewarned that there is some mention of abuse in this episode. Listener discretion advised. So the Thanksgiving holiday is past us, but there are still 2 potatoes sitting ready to give you their twice-baked reviews. Tonight on Strikes Our Fancy, it's just me, Craig, and
it's your other co-host, Caleb. Where's Rob?
Rob unfortunately couldn't be with us. Those damn holidays getting in the way, scheduling and whatnot.
It is. I am uncomfortable being in the same room alone with you, Craig.
Yeah, our setup's a little different. I'm just sitting here staring deep into Caleb's dark pools of eyes.
He's staring at me menacingly. So we'll see how this night ends, apparently.
But thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We're doing something a little bit different this week since we neither have a guest nor one of our regular hosts. And so Caleb and I are going to chat a little bit about a couple movies we watched recently.
You know what's weird, though? We lost our Rob. We didn't lose our Rob.
No.
Our Rob's not here.
He's on hiatus.
He's on hiatus. But also, we have a Robert.
Yeah.
And even he's not here.
Yeah, I said the scheduling doesn't work out there either. He's on deck. Hopefully over the holidays we can line something up.
Okay. So I just think it's weird that we have Robs and nothing works.
We've been robbed.
We've been robbed. But anyways, I forced Craig to watch 2 movies, and I say forced because that's kind of what happened.
It was late into the evening, and I was happy to acquiesce. They were great movies. One of which I'd been kind of wanting to watch for a while. I knew of it, but it's kind of an unfortunate topic. But I'm glad we watched it.
Which one?
The Spotlight. Oh, okay. Spotlight. Okay. It's a delicate subject matter, but I was glad to watch it. So Caleb, forced being a very strong word. I disagree there, but what were your 2 recommendations for us to watch?
My 2 recommendations: Spotlight, starring Michael Keaton. Wonderful movie. I say wonderful movie. It is a very dark subject matter. Very brightly lit movie, though.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, about the Boston Globe Spotlight team back in 2001, highlighting kind of for the first time in the mainstream the sexual abuse scandals from the Catholic Church. Mm-hmm.
I came into this movie with a vastly different expectation than what I got. I was expecting Batman and the Hulk to, take down the Catholic Church.
And that's not what you got.
That's not what I got. No.
Probably would have made a vastly more entertaining movie.
But then the second movie.
And the second movie, Smoke Signals, directed by Chris Iyer, about 2 Native American men from the Coeur d'Alene Indian Reservation in Idaho, embarking on a road trip to Arizona. Probably doesn't sound as interesting, but I think it is, for me, it is another culturally significant movie that my family has grown up watching kind of consistently.
I was glad you introduced it to me because I had never even heard of it. It wasn't on my radar at all.
Craig, you are the whitest slice of bread I've ever met.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
I also am just not very movie knowledgeable. If it's not being advertised in the previews before another movie, I'm not going to know it's a movie that's coming out.
If it's not in your face 24/7, no Marvel logo at the beginning.
Yep, exactly. We're not all art house patrons like you, Caleb.
I love my Marvel stuff, but also I need me that pretentious snobby shit as well.
But yeah, which one should we dive into first?
Let's go with Spotlight. Well, what were your initial thoughts? Go in.
So from the little I knew of the movie going in, again, the Boston Globe doing investigative journalism into Catholic Church sex scandals in Boston. I knew that premise, but I thought it was going to focus way more on the victims. I thought it was going to be uncomfortable to be a viewer in because I thought they were going to be a lot more in your face. I don't like that term. I thought they were going to be a lot more poignant with the acts that were committed rather than the process that was involved to uncover it.
I think that's why I like this movie. It's not so much about, it's more about the investigation as opposed to like the actions of the church. It is about the actions of the church. but it's more of a movie about good journalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, I don't think, again, this is probably just me. I don't have the words, Craig, but good journalism.
Good thing we're using a heavily visual medium so that we don't have to rely on our words.
Exactly. I call myself a writer, whatever. But good journalism itself doesn't make an appearance nowadays very much.
No.
It is very much exploitive. And this movie could have, I think that's what you thought this would be, exploitive.
Yeah, a little bit.
And it's not that.
Mm-mm.
I think there's 3 main victims that we see in the movie that we actually know their story.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, they're more there to propel the investigation forward as opposed to learn their story and about them.
Right. And their stories are told essentially in one scene. Like
Yeah.
they're getting, the journalists are getting those stories in tandem. So all of that is condensed down to one scene.
Yep.
And then the rest of it is, what do they do with this information and how do they uncover more things?
Mm-hmm.
The movie did not make me as uncomfortable as I thought it would, in that I thought the abuse was going to be way more in your face.
But like, having that was your expectation.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you thought was a detriment to not have? Like sometimes, even that, I forget her name, but Rachel McAdams plays her in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about how language is important. Because all the guy says was, he raped me.
Yep.
And she's like, but language is important. I need you to tell me what he did.
Yeah.
Do you think visually it would have been important for us to see that?
What's tough about that is, where do you draw the line between being descriptive so that everyone involved has a fundamental, crystal clear understanding of what happened? We need to describe it or show it or talk about it in a way that we can't hide anything. We need to know exactly how heinous these things were. How do you draw the line between that, which is good in my opinion, versus, as you were mentioning earlier, exploitative? Where you draw that line, I have no idea. I think the movie did a really good job of that. That again, it was a very short amount of time that occurred in the movie.
But the exploitation that does happen isn't really exploited. It is just informative.
Right.
As the victims are describing their actions of the priests, it's not, the music doesn't like overlay it with like sympathy music. It's not, the cameras aren't doing anything fancy. It's not visually stunning. It's just them telling their story.
Yeah. And I think Spotlight did a great job of, I would think part of the reason they did it that way is that is probably how the journalists were feeling or thinking in that moment. Yeah, I might be disgusted about what was being talked about. This might make me feel awful, but I need this information. We have to get through this so that I can process it and move on with it and use it to hold those who committed the crimes accountable.
Yeah.
Which I think was a great storytelling way to also highlight what happened. Because we've been talking about the axe for a good chunk here, but that's such a small part of the movie. It's not, they do not dwell on it at all.
No.
The specifics anyway.
Again, it's a movie about the journalism. It's a movie about the investigation. Do you think this movie was boring?
No.
Because this isn't an action-packed summer thriller. This is a movie with showing them putting things into Excel spreadsheets and reading books.
Yep. Quietly sitting, taking notes.
Exactly.
Maybe typing on a keyboard.
Yeah.
There was a lot of downtime.
Walking down hallways, talking to each other.
Exactly.
It is.
Yeah. I think one of the most energetic scenes, and we talked about this after we watched it, was Mark Ruffalo like trying to get to the courthouse. And we even said, I think I might have said as it was happening, I'm like, why didn't they have someone else do this? Like, he's trying to get from Florida to get to the courthouse on time. And I'm like, why didn't they just send another reporter who was in town? But that's not as dramatic.
It's not. My own thinking about this, Craig. I got you.
Yeah.
It was around 9/11. They were all busy. He was in Florida for a reason.
Yeah.
They were probably all on other assignments, in my own opinion. So
could be.
So bam, gotcha.
Yeah. To your net point, though, was the movie boring? It wasn't for me. I think it is a movie for a certain either type of moviegoer or when you're in a certain mood. This isn't a movie that I would, as I'm flipping through my channels, be like, oh yeah, Spotlight, I'm going to sit down and watch that.
Yeah.
something I wish I had looked into a little bit before we started is how was it received at the time overall? Because I think it was a great movie with great cinematography, directing, writing was all good, but the subject matter is very sensitive, and I imagine the Catholic Church was pissed.
I think, and I know it was nominated for some Academy Awards, so it was well received, like
critically.
From the Catholic Church, I don't know myself.
Right.
I'm sure there was backlash from the Catholic Church, so I don't think they were well. I don't think they would receive this movie well. Anyways.
No, I mean it's a scathing critique of something horrible that happened in their past.
Yeah,
which this is very tangentially related. I did like that there was no like clear-cut villain. There was no like this person is who we should fixate all of our anger towards.
Kind of.
At least from my opinion. What do you think?
Cardinal Law is who they're trying to get. He was the highest bishop or cardinal in that area, and he knew about this, and that's who they're trying to.
But he was barely in the movie.
He's barely in the movie.
Yeah.
You're right. He's barely in the movie.
From a viewer point of just the movie. I'm not the story as a whole.
Yeah.
But just the movie, I didn't really feel like there was an individual to be angry at.
No. He's just a concept.
Yeah.
He's more of a stand-in for the system.
For a good chunk of the movie, I did not know they were talking about a person. When they said Cardinal Law, I thought they were talking about a system.
Yeah.
Like cardinal law, just like like labor law.
Yeah,
I thought it was like a certain element of the Catholic Church that like a committee.
Like there's something. Laws, and this is a cardinal law.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is part of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
Like, did this half of the organization know about it? It did not click with me that they were talking about one individual.
You're not the only person.
Yeah.
Myself, I believe my friend Woody when I showed him. I'm sure other people like it. The word cardinal attached to law just makes it seem like it's something written down that we need to follow.
Yeah. This is papal law.
Yeah. When did you figure it out?
Like, towards the very end. Like I think it might have been in like the end screen where they're talking about kind of the ramifications of the story, and they talked about cardinal law as a person. I was like, oh shit. Because I think when we saw cardinal law in the movie, I felt like they just referred to him as the cardinal.
Yeah.
So it was hard to just put that name to him. And then, it always felt like an abstract when they were talking about cardinal law.
And this isn't a movie where they spoon feed you things. You got to keep up and pay attention.
Yeah.
So like, it's hard to pick that out because it kind of moves quick, these scenes with that dialogue. To
loop back a little bit. So like I was saying, I didn't feel like there was any one individual to be angry at. Like there wasn't evil personified like some other movies have done when stories like this. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree.
But I did notice while I was watching it, I was looking for that. I kept thinking that members of the community or members of the Boston Globe that were being kind of suspicious or dodgy, I thought there was going to be like a big reveal, like, oh yes, this person knew about it the entire time.
Like there was a huge conspiracy. Yes. And there kind of is, but it's not.
Yeah. I thought it would be there'd be a focal point in the narrative, but that is one of the big scenes in the movie towards the end is, no, we were all part of this, whether we realized it or not.
Even Michael Keaton's character who buried the initial story years ago.
Yep.
You know, like it's not a conspiracy of a set concrete conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's just the church helps. And this isn't an interesting story to our readers, so we're just going to bury it.
It's a conspiracy of complicitness.
Yeah.
Like it's not necessarily out of malice. That doesn't feel quite right either, though, to say that.
I think it is malice. It has to be.
But maybe this is going to get, I think, a little deep for our regular Strikes Our Fancy. But is it malice if you don't have the whole picture? You know, if you have your slice of the picture, and you're just, I'm thinking specifically to Michael Keaton's character, where he's just like, okay, I'll report this and then move on. Like I'm not going to dig into it any further. Is that malice? Is that laziness?
Apathy.
Or is it complicitness? Yeah, apathy. I don't know.
which apathy, I think, is in turn part of malice in some respects. And I think it works here. Just not caring, but
to my point though, about like, there not being a person in particular to be angry at, or that is the focal point or the figurehead of the conspiracy. I can only think of him as the guy from CSI. He was representing the church at a few different functions, and he was the one who was at the bar with Michael Keaton's character saying like, hey, are you really going to run this story? Are you really going to like throw away the community or trash the community? He was probably as close as we got to that kind of figurehead.
He was throughout the movie, I keep making in my own head allusions to like mob enforcers. Even at the beginning opening scene, the priest, when he gets out of the police station, walks straight into a black car and they drive away. Yeah. His character, that character you're talking about, I forget his name too. He just shows up randomly in these random meetings where even Michael Keaton's like, we didn't know he was going to be there. And he's making these underhanded, like, let's get on the same page. What's happening here,
He was the church's fixer.
I think that's absolutely true. That has a certain mob undertone to it. I think if anybody, he was probably the henchman, and I think he is as close to a villain in this piece as he can get.
Right.
There's one of my favorite characters in this movie is Stanley Tucci as Mitch Garabedian, the lawyer who's the small-time lawyer who's fighting against the church. He has a couple of really powerful lines in this movie. One of the ones that I like is when he's having supper with Mark Ruffalo's character, and he says, "You can be guaranteed that if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to abuse one."
Yeah,
Yep. And that, again, I lost my train of thought, but I think that's a very another poignant line for these people who are part of this church who choose to look the other way.
Yeah, and I, with stuff like this, I'm very black or white. There's really no shades of gray for me. It's either you are aware of this and you are actively trying to do something about it, or you're actively trying to remove yourself from any support of the church, or you're in it and you're complicit. To me, there's really no middle ground.
So to bring it more towards movie-wise, this movie is filmed, I say, and I'm not going to say that I thought of this, but the movie is filmed very, very boring on purpose, they said. Because to make this movie overly elaborate is to be exploitive, as we were talking about earlier, The score of the movie is very subdued. There's like bright colors in the office, but it's also kind of
the whole movie was very washed out.
Yeah, washed out. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah. There's not a lot of color saturation in the movie,
and to have brought more vitality or to have brought more bombastic music to this would have underhanded the topic, because this movie isn't about that. This movie is about again, good journalism, the investigation, and to not exploit the stories that appear.
Bringing pageantry to this subject matter just doesn't feel right.
No.
I have two. I wanted to tie back. You were talking about Stanley Tucci. I have two notes on some of the acting in the movie. One was Stanley Tucci, how like he was presented to us initially as like this kooky lawyer and like very eccentric, and then after like his first scene, it's just Stanley Tucci. He doesn't have any of that eccentricism anymore to me. It's just Stanley Tucci.
That's just how Stanley Tucci is.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, that's what I mean. Like in that first scene, though, he felt like he was playing that character or that person.
Yeah.
But then after that, it's like they didn't bother anymore. That's kind of what it felt like. Or that the subject matter was so serious, he just toned it way down.
I mean, I see what you're talking about, and I see it as that first scene. He is overly antagonistic to Mark Ruffalo's character, because he doesn't trust him. He's not trying. But then he's having dinner with Mark Ruffalo, and then he's going out with Mark Ruffalo. Then they're meeting for lunch on a bench. So that antagonism is no longer there. The kookiness no longer needs to be there because he's found, maybe if not somebody he trusts, to somebody he can relate to.
True.
You know.
And it did come back like right at the in Stanley Tucci's like last scene with the newspaper. He's like, "Can I keep this?"
Yeah.
So there's a little bit there, but
you saw that. You saw that as kooky.
Well, I mean, it was kooky in that like he in one of the first scenes with him, he had the newspaper from something else.
The Phoenix.
Yeah, like that's maybe one of his quirks is that he keeps all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know if kooky is the right word, but like in that moment, it also felt powerful. He's like,
it's a validation.
Yeah. So, but it was a callback to that first scene.
Yeah.
In my head,
I didn't see it as a callback, but I do now. And you are right. That's awesome. Yeah.
The other kind of acting decision that felt weird was Mark Ruffalo.
I was just getting ready to. I was going to stop you because I wanted to guess, and it was Mark Ruffalo.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. Is it how he kind of like leans and hold on? Oh, he does weird something with his body. Right?
He's twitchy. It's like he's had too much coffee. Like and I'm assuming that's based on the actual person. Maybe
has to be.
I'm hoping that wasn't just an artistic choice Mark Ruffalo made, and everyone was just like, all right, I guess we'll just roll with that.
Yeah.
Because it did feel odd. But now that I'm thinking about it, it did bring some energy to the movie. You know, like Mark Ruffalo's character is constantly moving in a otherwise very still, somber movie.
He is the only one that's kind of constantly moving.
Yeah. So maybe
he's trying to make it back from Florida.
Yeah, right. So maybe that was deliberately done, just to, I don't know, visually engaging is the right way to put it, but
he is probably the more engaging of the crew.
Yeah.
Next to Michael Keaton, who feels like a wheeler dealer.
Yeah.
You know, he's always at those big parties. He's invited to those big parties where everybody's at, you know. I think next to him, I forget, I wish I had a list of their character names, but Mark Ruffalo's character is another one who is he's more active in the investigation than anybody else, I think. I think he is our audience surrogate in all of this, in my own opinion. Because he's out there meeting, he met the victim from Stanley Tucci's office. He met Stanley Tucci's character first. He's out there at the courthouse trying to get everything. I think Rachel McAdams' character went there second for like a brief scene. But like for the most part, it feels like Mark Ruffalo's character is out there doing the bulk of the investigation while Rachel McAdams and the other guy are just putting things into Excel.
I mean, Rachel McAdams, we saw her character meet with a few victims.
Yeah, you're right.
And she was the one who ran into the priest, which was a very poignant scene for its own batch of reasons.
Yeah. What did you think of that scene? What did you think of his reason?
I mean, it sounds exactly like something a molester would say.
Yeah.
I think they didn't play that up at all.
No.
I'm willing to bet that is a quote from the original incident.
And again, another scene where they could have made like the music blare or they could have made something happen. But it's quiet.
Yep.
This movie is quiet.
Yeah. And they don't play up the shock of what's being said visually, audio at all. They just let it stand for itself, which I think was a good choice.
And it does. When he says that line, I didn't get enjoyment from it.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Like that mattered somehow.
Yeah. Yep. Like somehow that makes it okay.
Yeah. And the look on her face.
Yep.
Was
like, did you really just say that?
Yeah.
You're just willing to talk about that, and also that's what you're going with.
Yeah.
That's the rationalization. That he just rationalized it away.
Also, he says it almost childlike.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where they're talking to that psychosexual therapist who is like, they're all stunted sexually to like 12, 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that had something to do with his own mental state. That's why he sounded so, again, not an excuse for his actions, but why he did sound maybe. Yeah.
Well, my understanding, those rehabilitation centers, I'm doing air quotes, very grandiose here. That's what they taught them.
Yeah.
This wasn't your fault. Like they cycled these priests through these rehabilitation centers. They basically taught them this wasn't your fault. Don't do it again, but it wasn't your fault. And then kick them out the door.
Yeah.
Like move on.
You're heated. You're heated. Bring it
the
down.
blood's getting angry.
First the dentist, now this.
Yeah. But overall, a very good movie. I think a movie I needed to see probably years ago, and I think more people should see this movie.
It's wonderfully made, wonderfully subdued. It is a in a world of movies that are full of bombast. This is something that is just as important, but more subdued, and it's very. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I do watch this at least a few times a year.
Wow.
Because the subject matter in it is hard. Yeah. But I watch it for the journalism, like the investigation that happens.
Well, and for the cinema art itself.
Yeah.
Like, there are multiple layers here to unravel, and I don't think we've done a good job of segmenting them. Yeah. I think I'm to blame for that.
I love watching people put shit into Excel, Craig. Like, if I could just watch a movie of that.
Yeah. You should just get a job doing data entry.
No, I need to watch other people doing it.
Oh, okay. So you need to get a job managing data entry.
Exactly. And I don't have that. I don't have the creds for that yet. So we'll see what happens. So now that we're deviating from such heavy subject matter, let's talk about father-son relationships. Let's talk about the lighthearted father-son relationships.
A different kind of father.
Exactly. A more
biological, not spiritual.
Exactly. There it is. But anyways, our next movie topic or movie whatever review, Smoke Signals, which is about a father-son relationship about Victor and his friend Thomas who go on a road trip to collect Victor's father's ashes in Arizona, and the quirkiness that happens on their way down. It is billed as a comedy drama movie,
which I felt lied to.
I was just curious to say, was there as much comedy in this movie for you?
Yeah, no. Before we started watching this, we were on the sofa, and in Vudu it says comedy drama, and you said, "Oh, it's a comedy drama." And by the end of it, I was like, this had very little comedy in it.
Craig, you had the look on your face like, I'm ready to laugh.
Yeah. I was expecting more yucks.
I am curious if some of the jokes in there are just not for you.
Could be.
Because there's a lot of Native American like things in there that I still laugh at, that I think I chuckled at a few times, because again, I've watched this movie so many times that diminishing returns.
Yeah. The sharp edges of the jokes have been rounded smooth.
Exactly.
As we were watching it together, I don't know how much you were paying attention to me, but were there moments that like you thought I was going to laugh and didn't?
The two girls in the backwards car, I thought you would have laughed a bit more.
Yeah. Okay. And I do remember after that scene, I was just like, wait, are they going to explain that at all?
You looked more befuddled than anything.
I was just like, wait, what? What just happened? Yeah.
And I think you thought, like, are they going to be bigger? No, they're not going to be bigger characters. Nope. They're not even going to explain why the car is driving like that. Nope. It is just something that happens on the res, Craig.
Just some set dressing, essentially.
World building. Yep. That's what that is.
But so our core characters, Victor and Thomas, the movie heavily focuses on them, and their relationship, I think, is the narrative that's the focus. But it's about their relationship with others as well, I think, is kind of the greater story.
I think I agree with that. I think it mostly focuses on their relationship with each other, along with both of their relationship with Victor's father. Mm-hmm. Because Arnold, Victor's father, saves Thomas at the very beginning of the movie. Mm-hmm. And I think that has a heavy, profound effect on Thomas. That's why he looks up to him. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to deal with, spoiler alert, the abuse that Arnold gives to Victor throughout the movie.
Something that they didn't do heavy-handed, and they didn't even show us. But in hindsight, what I'd be willing to bet was that Thomas was always being told that story from his grandmother, who was incredibly grateful the night of the tragedy. And so that's all he got of Arnold was, he did this. He's a hero. He was so great to save you.
He saved you. He's why you're here.
And it's not just, I mean, obviously he was an infant when it happened, but he was probably hearing that his entire life.
Yeah.
that we didn't really get to see on screen.
No. But it is heavily implied, though, I think.
Yeah.
Because I'm not, you know what? Now that you say that, though, like, he kind of hero worship Arnold.
Mhm.
Like, the stories he tells throughout.
Right.
He's putting Arnold on a pedestal, even though he doesn't really know him.
Right. And from my first viewing of it, I didn't really understand why. You know, that's what I'm saying. In hindsight, I'm trying to come up with a reason why.
Yeah.
And that's the best I can do, is that his grandma was maybe telling him these stories.
Yeah.
Because they briefly show us the relationship between him and his grandma, and they're very close.
Mm.
But we don't really get to hear much from her. Like,
No.
she doesn't say a lot.
No. She's just cute.
Yeah, she was. Cute grandma.
What do you think of Victor as our protagonist? Because Thomas is our secondary protagonist, but he is not our main focus. Victor,
Right.
who is a ball of flame.
Mm-hmm. From my perspective, he did feel like he was just full of anger. Just full of anger at the world, anger at his dad, anger at his situation. And it just kind of, it came out in different ways. It didn't never really seem like his anger was focused on anyone. It was a problem of his own making, the way his anger would come out, but it wasn't consistent. And so narratively, I felt like that it was hard to put a pin in it until the very end.
And how did that fix it for you?
It was when Susie was telling stories about Arnold to Victor, explaining kind of her perception of Arnold, and then Victor was like, "That's garbage.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't know my dad." Is kind of how I felt. And then I felt like that was when his anger came to a boiling point. But I think you and I have very different views of this movie. We talked about the ending, and we interpreted it completely differently.
Yeah.
So that's my perspective. How about yours?
So I don't see it as disjointed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think somebody growing up in an abusive household, you know, I think the anger is unfocused. It is not going to be as, he's obviously angry at his dad. The only point of love in his life you see in the movie is his mom. I mean, I think one of those points in the movie at the very beginning, she's talking about how her arthritis is acting up, and he gently takes her hand and he starts like massaging it. And I think that's very, very poignant to show that he does, in fact, love his mother so much. Mm-hmm. But other than that, every single person he encounters, he's very cold, very stoic.
Yeah. Or even kind of just lashes out at.
Or lashes out
at. I think of the lady on the bus.
Yeah, yeah. For no reason.
Yeah.
You looked perturbed by that when that happened. You're like, why did he lash out at it?
Yeah, it did feel kind of out of nowhere, but I think in the context of, as they explain later, as he's talking to Thomas, it's like, it's us against the world.
Yeah.
This was me protecting us before they had a chance to hurt us.
Yeah.
And that made sense once I viewed that scene in full.
Yeah.
Like, in that moment, I was like, what the hell's going on? And then I was like, oh, that makes more sense.
A lot of this movie only makes sense in the grand scheme of the full view.
Yep.
There is that scene at the very beginning where Arnold saves Thomas, and then the grandma thanks Arnold, "Thank you for saving my son," and he's on the verge of crying, but he says, "I didn't mean to," and it's kind of played off as a joke, like I just don't know what to say, and it's not just you. I heard you giggle at it, but everybody does. It's played off as like, oh, he's just being humble, he doesn't know what to say. But then you learn and find out why at the very end. Yeah. And spoiler alert, he started the fire that killed everybody in that house, including Thomas's parents. And that almost killed Thomas.
That awkward moment in context, or once you have all the evidence, turns into guilt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And rewatching it so much with that knowledge, I don't giggle at that line anymore. I kind of tear up whenever that happens at the very beginning. So it's a weird juxtaposition when I watch it with new people, especially you, and that line comes up, and I hear the giggle, and I'm sitting there like,
you don't even know.
Yeah, you don't know yet.
You don't know.
Yeah,
you don't know how awful this is.
Yeah. So like, there's a lot of things that come back around. Do you think that this movie does a good job of portraying? I think this is going to come to our disjointed view of the movie. Does Victor forgive his father in the end?
Yeah.
You know,
I'm not saying yes. I'm saying like, yeah, that is the bifurcation. That is the difference in view. I think that you and I have for the end of this movie. Again, just to summarize, bulk of the movie is them going to get Victor's father's ashes, and at the very end of the movie is him getting rid of the ashes or
Screaming.
spreading the ashes.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's screaming when he does it. And in my view, from some of the lines that were said before and that scene where he's actually spreading it, I think he's still angry. That was kind of how I interpreted it. Because when he is talking in the scene prior about disposing the ashes or dispersing the ashes, he says he's thinking about it like clearing out of something out of the attic. And to me, that is, he's getting rid of trash. Is how I interpreted that line. And then we see him throwing the ashes and screaming and kind of like falling to the ground. And I still felt like he was really angry. But that was my view. What was your view?
I see it as him releasing the anger. He is forgiving his father for leaving, for the abuse. He learned the full story of what happened. Again, knowing the full story of what happened and why his father turned to alcohol, why his father left. You know, it doesn't absolve Arnold of what he's done, but it also, again, knowing things in completion, the why of what happened, I think it gives Victor a better look at his own father.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier for him to forgive. I see that scream as cathartic as opposed to angry.
Yeah.
That's my own view of it.
Sure.
And I love that scene. And the poem that Thomas is reciting over that scene.
I already forgot the poem.
Oh, he's talking about, do we forgive our fathers? And if so, what is left?
And, oh, that's right. And if so, what is left? And maybe this is something we should just give credit to the director and the writer, like that it is open to interpretation, because with that line, if we get rid of our anger, what is left? I hear that as, you can't get rid of your anger. Like if you like, or it's difficult to get rid of that anger that you've held on to for so long, because then, yeah, you have nothing left. Like if he gets rid of his anger towards his father, he probably doesn't feel anything towards his father.
Which, is that better than anger?
I don't know. Yeah.
And again, the open interpretation of this ending is wonderful, because I don't see it as that. You know, what is left is up to you.
Sure.
You can make that distinction yourself. You know, if you release that anger against your own father. That's how I see it. Everybody has parental problems. You know, everybody's grown up with their own insecurities that have happened in the past with their own parents, you know, and I think it's important to really focus and forgive your parents, even though you can't get that maybe satisfaction of telling them that you forgive them to their face. You can still say it and you can still have that feeling. And you can have what is left, which is you're up to you.
No, Caleb. Catharsis only happens with confrontation. You can't have it by yourself.
Can I just shake?
Yeah, exactly. I think your view is so much more healthy than mine.
You're just like, I'm just so angry.
I'm just going to be angry, Caleb. And if you make me loosen my grip on my anger, I'll have nothing left. I can't do it.
Can't do it. Can I just hate my parents? Can I just do that?
Yeah, just give me that, Caleb. Just let me. I don't, by the way. Well, no.
One of my favorite things about this movie is the theme of stories. There's a lot of stories being told in this movie. And to me, that comes from it's very culturally specific. Now, I mean, I'm not saying that stories are the wheelhouse of just Native Americans, but the way Thomas tells stories, over-exaggerated.
Well, and I just wanted to mention, not just there's a consistent theme of stories in the movie, that is a consistent theme of that character. Thomas is constantly telling stories. Yeah. So that was a big part of the film, and a big part of that character.
Yeah. And he's known for it, not just in the movie, but like in universe, on the reservation, he tells stories,
right.
You know, and how those stories have affected the people around you. All Thomas's life, he's heard the story of how Arnold saved him. But does Victor tell him the story of what really happened? We don't know.
Oh, yeah. Thomas doesn't know. As he's from the viewer's perspective, he never gets that information.
We don't know if Victor or Susie tells Thomas, because Victor and Thomas leave almost immediately
right
after that happened. And in my own head, Victor gives Thomas some of his father's ashes, to me saying he's never going to tell Thomas.
Yeah, because even as Thomas is talking about disposing his half of the ashes, I keep saying dispose, spreading his half of the ashes, I felt like he was still venerating Arnold.
Yeah.
Like he still was holding him up to that pedal, or holding him onto that pedestal.
Yeah.
I would interpret it as Victor is never gonna tell him.
No. Yeah. Again, the importance of stories in our own memories. But how do you think stories affect this particular movie, if anything, as a theme, if at all?
I mean, parables are stories with a moral. In my upbringing, in the how they were used to try and shape me. And it was hard for me not to have that lens as Thomas was telling these stories. It was hard for me not to think, well, why is he telling this story? What's the purpose? What is the point he's trying to get across? Very loosely, and haphazardly. But there's got to be a point, right? That was what I kept thinking. I'm like, there's got to be a point. Yeah. And now that I've consumed the movie as a whole, I don't know that there was always. I don't know if I was looking into it too much, reading into it too much, or just let the story be a story.
Just let the story be a story.
Yeah.
I do like that. So there are two moments that we see with Victor's parents. One is a story from Thomas, and the other is from the point of view of Victor for his father. Mm-hmm. And they have to do with magic. And I'm just bringing this up because this is one of my favorite things that I just put together after I watched this a few times. Arnold is talking about how he's magic, and he's talking about making things disappear. Mm-hmm. Poof, everything's gone.
Right.
Poof, I'm gone. When Thomas tells a story about Arlene, Victor's mother, it's about the opposite. It's about bringing more to the community as opposed to
making something appear,
bringing food, bringing the fry bread to the people, bringing food and sustenance to the people. And I just thought that was an interesting parallel between the two of them, that these two stories told that the viewer sees is Victor is a source of maybe not pain, but he's definitely not stable. But Arlene, she brings something to people. Mm-hmm. I just think that's interesting parallel between the two of them, that what we see and what we're told shows their personality and how they're perceived by people.
You just told me not to read into these stories, Caleb.
one of them's not even a story. Like one's just a scene with the dad.
True.
So that's why I was it's not a story. That's why I was trying to justify it in my head. Like, okay, it's not a story, but it is an interesting parallel,
Yeah. I hadn't even thought I do really enjoy that, actually, to really crystallize their difference in personality.
Yeah.
Between those two.
Even then, I think that's a very Native American sort of trait of telling stories for the parable reason. I think I pointed this out to you when we were watching, is that Thomas comes home from the store. He's like, Thomas will pay for my trip, but he wants to come with me. Mm-hmm. And his mom is like, whenever people say I have the best fry bread, but when people give me advice, I listen to them. Mm-hmm. She doesn't tell him yes or no to take them. She gives him a story. Right.
And maybe that's why for the rest of the movie, I had apart from my own personal view, that is a story being told for a very explicit reason.
Yeah.
But then the rest of the stories aren't supposed to be interpreted that way?
Maybe.
I don't know. Like, I mean, because it kind of felt like we're setting up a standard. Like this is... But it was very explicit.
Yeah.
Like it was very directed at Victor, like, hey, you should take the help. Mm. But some of the other stories that Thomas's
stories are always very whimsical.
Right, and broad.
Yeah.
They're very broad and vague, and it's just like, wait, what are we talking about now?
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's all over the damn place.
Yeah, I think it's up to the viewer to take away what they want. And that's sometimes the point of a good story, is to take away from it what you want.
Yeah. as we've demonstrated, we both took away something different from
Yep.
this movie.
Yeah.
Mine is more hopeful.
Yeah.
So of the two that we've watched together, which one would you recommend to the viewers? If you had obviously
You can't make me choose, Caleb, but
I'm
everyone should
making
watch
you
both
choose.
of these. No, everyone should watch both of these because they're so fundamentally different, and
Yeah.
like they're so. It's a little odd that we're talking about both of these in one cast, but it just happened to be the last two movies we watched together.
Yeah.
But like they're both great in completely different ways.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you even you waxed on about the cinematography of Spotlight, but Smoke Signals felt like kind of an indie movie. Like they didn't have the budget, they couldn't do huge cinematography for it. But it doesn't. It's not great for that. It's great for completely other reasons.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. And obviously, with the heavy subject of the Catholic Church sex abuse scandal, Saturday night viewing of Spotlight probably isn't in order for most people.
No.
But even Smoke Signals, it's not as heavy-handed on the comedy as you would hope.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely put it in the drama category. Yes, it had its light moments, but I also feel like every drama does. Like, it can't be drama the whole time. You need moments of contrast.
I have a feeling you're gonna email Voodoo and be like, change this.
Yes.
No,
This isn't right. Damn it!
this isn't right. I was misled.
Yeah. I was lied to. I think, in summation, these were two wildly different movies, both in subject matter and in tone and in content and in cinematography. Like, these movies were wildly, wildly different.
They should have never been reviewed together, but damn it, ladies and gentlemen, we did it.
But here's the thing. What unifies them is don't be afraid of a powerful message told through art. I think for both of these movies, I went into them, you brought them to me, and I went into them being like, I don't know if I'm ready for this. I was a little afraid. And I am a better person for having watched them. So thank you for that, Caleb. But I think that's the unifier, is powerful stories told through art, and how sometimes that can get a message to people who wouldn't otherwise get it.
Also, Caleb has good movies.
Yeah. That is my unifying between these two very different movies. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't. These are completely drastically different movies, but I am glad that I got to show them to somebody.
Yeah.
I'm glad somebody sits down and listens to my opinion.
And again, thank you for letting me be that one of those people. I enjoyed both of them.
And we're going to go watch something right now. I want you to know that. So this is something that Rob usually says, but I'm going to try not to butcher this. If you want to contact us, we have our own website, ourfancy.site.
Yeah.
Craig, is that right?
That is right.
Hey,
That is accurate.
there it is.
You can also reach out to us at strikesarefancy@gmail.com or Instagram, I think, is the only other social media
We do have an Instagram.
Yeah.
Twitter is falling apart.
Yep.
Rob, this is just for you. I hated that I had to say that. It didn't feel right. So come back soon.
Yeah, we miss you. So thank you, listeners, for joining us in this kind of one-off movie review. Well, it's not a one-off review, but it's our one-off Caleb and Craig movie review.
Which isn't so unheard of.
No.
Me and Rob did it. The two-person format has happened before.
True.
But I think this is the first time me and you've been alone together.
Yeah.
So
help. So I think we'll be back to our regular format next time. But in the meantime, thank you for listening. I have been Craig.
And of course, I've been Caleb.